My wife's idea of helping her sick mother involves more designer perfume than medicine bottles. Funny how grief smells like Chanel No. 5 at $200 an ounce. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "I'll be back tomorrow evening, honey," Cara said, adjusting her makeup in the hallway mirror. At 29, she still had that small-town beauty queen look that made men stupid and women jealous. Too bad I was getting smarter by the minute. "Take your time," I replied from my recliner, not looking up from the landscaping invoices spread across my lap. "Your mom needs you." The lie rolled off her tongue smoother than the lipstick she was applying. "She's having another bad day. The doctors say—" "I know what the doctors say." I finally looked up, studying her reflection. The black dress was new, so were the heels. Strange outfit for a sick room visit. "Drive safe." She kissed my cheek, leaving a perfect coral imprint that I didn't bother wiping away. The front door clicked shut, followed by the purr of her Honda backing out of our gravel driveway. I'm Eli Weston, 48 years old, owner of Weston Landscaping. I've been married to Cara for 3 years, and for the past 6 months, I've been watching her lie to me with increasing creativity. Tonight, I decided to stop being the fool. 20 minutes later, I was following her taillights through downtown Millfield, our sleepy New England town where everybody knows everybody else's business, except mine, apparently. She didn't turn toward her mother's house on Elm Street. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of the Millfield Inn, our town's only hotel. It wasn't much to look at, 2 stories of faded brick and peeling paint, but it served its purpose for traveling salesmen and, apparently, cheating wives. I parked across the street behind Murphy's Auto Repair, engine off, windows down. The September air carried the scent of fading leaves and my fading marriage. Cara walked into the lobby like she owned the place, her heels clicking against the asphalt with practiced confidence. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. 23 years I'd been building my business from nothing. 3 years I'd been building a life with her, all of it crashing down in a hotel parking lot that smelled like motor oil and betrayal. I waited. The digital clock on my dashboard seemed to move backward. 9:15 became 9:30, then 10 o'clock. My phone buzzed with a text from Cara. "Mom's sleeping now, love you." Sure she was. At 10:45, the hotel's side door opened. A man walked out, adjusting his shirt, running fingers through his hair. The parking lot security light caught his face, and my world tilted sideways. It was Danny Kellerman. Danny, my former best friend. Danny, who'd been my business partner until last year. Danny, who I'd trusted with my company, my secrets, and apparently my wife. He climbed into his black pickup truck and drove away without looking back, just like he'd driven away from our partnership, taking 3 of my biggest clients with him. I sat there for another hour, watching Cara's silhouette move past the second-floor window. Room 237. I memorized the number, burned it into my brain, alongside every other detail of this perfect autumn night that had just become the worst night of my life. When I finally drove home, the house felt different, smaller. The wedding photos on the mantel looked like evidence of a crime I'd been too stupid to prevent. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in my kitchen, staring at the business cards scattered across the table. Weston Landscaping. 23 years of 12-hour days, bleeding knuckles, and earned respect. Danny had wanted half of it when we'd partnered up. When I'd refused to sign over equal ownership of something I'd built from nothing, he'd walked away and taken my clients with him. Now he was taking my wife too. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. Not a suicide note or a confession. A plan. Danny Kellerman thought he'd won. He'd stolen my clients, seduced my wife, and probably laughed about both victories over beers with his new crew. but Danny had always been better at taking things than keeping them. Time to remind him of that particular character flaw. The next morning, I drove to my office at 6 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. The converted barn that housed Weston Landscaping sat on 5 acres of my property, surrounded by equipment, mulch piles, and the organized chaos of a working business. Tommy Pierce was already there, loading fertilizer into his truck. At 52, Tommy had been with me for 8 years, ever since his construction company went under. He was built like a fire hydrant and twice as reliable. "You're early," he said, hoisting a 50-pound bag like it weighed nothing. Couldn't sleep. I unlocked the office door. "Coffee?" "Always." We sat in my cramped office, surrounded by invoices, soil samples, and the smell of coffee strong enough to strip paint. Tommy studied my face with the attention of a man who'd seen his share of trouble. "What's eating you, Eli?" I'd known this moment would come. Tommy was too sharp to miss the signs, and I needed an ally. "Cara's having an affair." He set down his mug carefully. "You sure?" "Followed her to the Millfield Inn last night, saw her boyfriend leave." "Snake." Tommy's face darkened. "Anyone I know?" "Danny Kellerman." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Tommy had been there when Danny walked out on our partnership. He'd watched me rebuild my client base from scratch, working 18-hour days to keep the business afloat. That backstabbing piece of garbage. Tommy's knuckles cracked as he made a fist. "What do you want to do about it?" "Nothing stupid. Nothing illegal. But I'm done being the fool in this equation." Tommy nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Information. Danny's been bragging around town about his new contracts. I want to know who he's working for, what he's charging, and whether he's cutting corners." "I can ask around, discreetly." "Good. And Tommy, keep this between us for now." Goes without saying. After Tommy left for his morning jobs, I called my lawyer. Janet Morrison had handled my divorce from my first wife 15 years ago, back when I was young and stupid instead of middle-aged and stupid. She was sharp, expensive, and had no patience for emotional nonsense. "Eli Weston," she said when her secretary put me through. "It's been a while. I need advice, Janet, hypothetically. I charge the same rate for hypothetical advice as real advice, $200 an hour." "Fine. Hypothetically, if someone discovered their spouse was having an affair, what would be the smartest way to protect their assets?" A pause. "Are we talking about Cara?" "Small towns. Everyone knew everyone else's business, especially lawyers." "Hypothetically. Hypothetically that someone should document everything, secure their business assets, and avoid doing anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. Hypothetically. What about community property? Maine isn't a community property state, but a spouse can still claim significant assets in a divorce, especially if the other spouse does something stupid like assault the boyfriend. No assault planned. Good. Document everything. Bank records, phone bills, credit card statements. And Eli, don't be a hero. Let the lawyers handle it." I hung up feeling slightly better. At least I had a plan now. The rest of the morning, I worked on estimates for fall cleanup jobs, but my mind kept wandering to room 237. How long had this been going on? How many times had Cara lied about visiting her mother while she was actually screwing my former best friend? At lunch, I drove to the Millfield Inn. The desk clerk was Mrs. Henderson, a 60-year-old woman who'd been running the place since the Carter administration. She knew everything that happened in her hotel and most of what happened in the rest of town. "Eli Weston," she said with genuine warmth. "What brings you here?" "My wife might have left her earrings here last night. She was visiting someone in room 237. Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted slightly. "Oh, I see." The silence stretched between us like a loaded gun. Mrs. Henderson had been married for 40 years. She recognized the signs. "I'm sorry, Eli." How long? 3 months, maybe 4, always the same room. He pays cash. My chest felt tight. Thank you for telling me. You're a good man, Eli. You deserve better. I drove back to my office with Mrs. Henderson's words echoing in my head. 4 months. Cara had been lying to my face for 4 months while I'd worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her car, her clothes, and her hotel rooms with another man. Tommy was waiting for me with a grim expression and a manila folder. What did you find? Danny's been busy. He's got contracts with the new shopping center, the medical complex, and 3 of the big housing developments on the north side. Those were my bids. Gets better. He's using substandard materials and charging premium prices. The mulch he's spreading at the medical complex, it's dyed sawdust mixed with bark chips. Looks good for about 6 months, then turns to dust. I opened the folder and studied Tommy's notes. Danny had always cut corners, but this was worse than I'd expected. He was essentially defrauding his clients while underbidding me on every job. There's more, Tommy said. He's been telling people that you're having financial problems. Says your equipment is old and your crew is unreliable. The rage that had been simmering in my chest since last night finally reached a boil. Danny wasn't content with stealing my wife. He was trying to destroy my reputation too. I want you to document everything, I told Tommy. Take pictures of his work sites. Get samples of his materials. If he's cutting corners, his clients need to know. You thinking about exposing him? I'm thinking about a lot of things. That evening, Cara came home at 8:30 with a story about her mother's medication schedule and a bag of takeout Chinese food. She kissed my cheek and asked about my day, like nothing had changed. Fine, I said. How's your mom? Better today. The new pills seem to be helping. I nodded and ate my lo mein while my wife sat across from me, spinning lies as easily as breathing. She was good at it. I had to give her that. After dinner, I retreated to my home office and started going through our financial records. Credit card statements, bank accounts, phone bills. The evidence was all there once I knew what to look for. Hotel charges dating back 4 months, dinners at expensive restaurants I'd never been to, purchases at Victoria's Secret and other lingerie stores, all of it paid for with my money while I'd been working 12-hour days to keep us afloat. I printed everything and put it in a file folder marked Evidence. Tomorrow, I'd start building my case. Tonight, I'd start planning my revenge. Danny Kellerman had always been better at taking things than keeping them. Time to prove that theory. I spent the next week gathering evidence like a detective building a murder case. Tommy helped by photographing Danny's shoddy work at various job sites. The medical complex landscaping was already showing signs of failure. Brown patches where the fake mulch was breaking down, plants fading from poor soil preparation. Meanwhile, Cara continued her charade of caring for her sick mother. 3 more visits to the Millfield Inn, 3 more nights of lies served with my dinner. I played the oblivious husband perfectly, asking concerned questions about her mother's health while documenting every credit card charge and phone call. On Friday afternoon, my patience finally ran out. I was at Murphy's Auto getting my truck's oil changed when I saw Danny's black pickup pull into the gas station across the street. He climbed out, wearing expensive work clothes and a cocky smile that made my hands clench into fists. Danny looked good for a 45-year-old man. Regular gym workouts, professional haircut, boots that probably cost more than most people made in a week. Success suited him, especially when it was built on stolen clients and other men's wives. I paid Murphy and walked across the street. Eli. Danny's smile faltered when he saw me approaching. How's business? Honest, I replied. How's yours? Can't complain. Staying busy. I bet you are. I moved closer, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. Heard you got the medical complex contract. Yeah, that was a nice one. Sorry you didn't get it. Don't be. I saw your work there yesterday. Impressive what you can accomplish with sawdust and food coloring. Danny's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Just like you know what I'm talking about when I mention room 237 at the Millfield Inn. The gas pump handle slipped from Danny's fingers, clattering against his truck. He stared at me with the expression of a man who'd just realized he was standing in quicksand. Eli, I can explain. No need. It's all very clear. I kept my voice conversational, like we were discussing the weather. You steal my clients with low-ball bids and shoddy materials. You steal my wife with fancy dinners and hotel rooms. You've got a real talent for taking things that don't belong to you. Look, what happened between Cara and me is between you and me now. I stepped closer until we were almost touching. Here's what's going to happen, Danny. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop spreading lies about my business, and you're going to explain to your clients exactly what kind of materials you've been using. Danny tried to puff out his chest, but his heart wasn't in it. Or what? Or I'll explain it for you, to everyone, starting with the medical complex board and working my way through every client you've ever screwed over. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo Tommy had taken that morning. Danny's crew dumping dyed sawdust into wheelbarrows while bags of legitimate mulch sat unopened nearby. Want to bet? Danny stared at the photo for a long moment. When he looked up, his face had aged 5 years. What do you want? I want you gone, Danny. Out of my town, away from my wife, and out of my life. You've got 2 weeks to finish your current contracts and disappear. I can't just abandon my business. You should have thought about that before you decided to screw me over, literally and figuratively. I turned to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and Danny? If I see your truck at the Millfield Inn again, I'll make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of man you are, starting with your mother. Danny's mother was a devout Catholic who'd raised her son to respect marriage and treat women properly. The threat hit home like a sledgehammer. I drove back to my office feeling better than I had in weeks. The confrontation had been satisfying, but it was only the beginning. Danny might stay away from Cara, but that didn't solve my marriage problem. If anything, it made things more complicated. That evening, Cara announced she was going to visit her mother again. 2 nights in a row? I asked. Is she getting worse? The doctor wants to adjust her medication. I should probably stay overnight to monitor her. That's very thoughtful of you. I kissed her forehead. Give her my best. Cara left at 7:30, dressed in another new outfit I'd apparently paid for. I waited until her car disappeared down the road, then grabbed my jacket and headed for the Millfield Inn. Mrs. Henderson was working the front desk when I walked in. Evening, Eli. Evening. Is Danny Kellerman checked in tonight? She glanced at her computer screen. No reservation under that name. What about room 237? Empty tonight. I felt a moment of confusion, then understanding hit me like a punch to the gut. If Danny wasn't here, where was Cara? Mrs. Henderson, has my wife been here with anyone other than Danny Kellerman? Her expression grew uncomfortable. Eli, I don't think... Please, I need to know. She sighed heavily. There was a different man last week. Younger. I didn't recognize him. My phone buzzed with a text from Cara. Mom's sleeping. Love you. I thanked Mrs. Henderson and walked back to my truck on unsteady legs. Cara wasn't just having an affair with Danny. She was having affairs, plural. Multiple men, multiple lies, all funded by my hard work while I played the fool at home. I sat in the hotel parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at room 237's dark window and trying to process this new information. How many men had there been? How long had this been going on? How stupid could one man be? When I finally drove home, I went straight to my office and pulled out the yellow legal pad. Time to revise my plan. Danny Kellerman was just the beginning. Cara had been playing games with my life, my money, and my heart. Game over. Saturday morning brought the kind of crisp October weather that made landscaping a joy instead of a job. I should have been out raking leaves or winterizing flower beds. Instead, I was sitting in my office going through phone records with the dedication of a forensic accountant. The numbers told a story I didn't want to read. Calls to Danny's number dating back 6 months, but also calls to 3 other local numbers. I cross-referenced them against the phone book and online directories. One belonged to Mike Santos, who owned the new fitness center downtown. Another was registered to Jake Morrison, a real estate agent I'd done work for last year. The third number made me freeze. It belonged to Brad Hutchins, my nephew, my sister's 26-year-old son who'd been staying in our guest room for the past 2 months while he looked for work. I stared at that number until my eyes watered. Brad. The kid I'd been trying to help get back on his feet after losing his job in Boston. The kid who ate my food, used my Wi-Fi, and apparently my wife. The front door slammed, followed by Cara's voice calling my name. I shoved the phone records into a drawer and tried to compose my face. "In here," I called back. Cara appeared in the doorway, wearing yesterday's clothes and a guilty expression. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. How's your mom?" "Much better. The new medication really helped." She moved closer and kissed my cheek. "I'm going to shower and then make us some breakfast." "Sounds good." I waited until I heard the water running upstairs, then called Tommy. "I need you to do something for me," I said when he answered. "Can you swing by the fitness center downtown and see if Mike Santos is working today?" "The musclehead with the protein shake business? Sure. Why?" "Just curious about something. And Tommy? Be discreet." "Always am." While Tommy played detective, I drove to Janet Morrison's office. Saturday appointments cost extra, but I was past caring about money. "You look terrible," Janet said when I sat down across from her desk. "I feel worse. Remember our hypothetical conversation about documenting affairs? This isn't hypothetical anymore, is it?" "Not even close." I handed her the folder I'd been building. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, everything you asked for. Janet spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents while I sat there feeling like a patient waiting for cancer results. "This is comprehensive," she finally said, "and damning. Your wife has been very busy." "Multiple affairs?" "Based on this evidence, yes. The question is what you want to do about it." "I want a divorce. I want to keep my business and my house, and I want her to understand that actions have consequences. The first 2 are achievable. The third could get you in trouble if you're not careful. I'm not planning to hurt anyone, but I'm done being the fool in this situation." Janet leaned back in her chair. "Eli, you've been married 3 years. In Maine, that limits her claim on assets you owned before the marriage. Your business and house should be safe if we handle this properly." "What about assets acquired during the marriage?" "Those get divided, but given her infidelity and the financial evidence of her affairs, a judge might be sympathetic to your position." I left Janet's office feeling like I had a battle plan. The next step was confronting Cara, but I wanted all my ducks in a row first. Tommy called as I was driving home. "Mike Santos is definitely working today," he reported. "Spent an hour at the gym watching him train clients. Guy's built like a Greek statue and has an ego to match." "Did you talk to him?" "Briefly. Mentioned I was thinking about joining the gym. He gave me the full sales pitch and his personal phone number." Tommy paused. "Eli, this guy's a player. He was hitting on 2 different women while I was there." "Thanks, Tommy. I owe you one." "You don't owe me anything. Just be careful, okay? I've seen what happens when good men get pushed too far." When I got home, Brad was sitting at my kitchen table eating cereal and scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw guilt flash across his face before he could hide it. "Morning, Uncle Eli." "Brad." I poured myself coffee and studied my nephew. He was handsome in that young, careless way that women found attractive. Dark hair, athletic build, and the kind of smile that suggested he'd never faced real consequences for anything. "Aunt Cara said her mom's doing better." "Did she?" I sat down across from him. When did you talk to Cara? Last night when she got home, I was getting a glass of water. The lie came easily, but I caught the tell. Brad touched his nose when he lied, a habit he'd had since childhood. That's nice of you to be concerned about her mother. Yeah, well, family's important. I almost laughed. Family. Right. Brad, how's the job search going? Pretty good. I've got a few leads. Another nose touch. The kid was a terrible liar, which made me wonder how long he and Cara had been carrying on right under my nose. That's great. You know, I've been thinking it might be time for you to find your own place. Get back to being independent. Brad's face fell. I thought I could stay until I got back on my feet. You've been here 2 months. That seems like enough time to get established. Uncle Eli, if this is about money, it's not about money, Brad. It's about you being a man and taking responsibility for your life. And staying away from my wife, I thought, but didn't say. Brad finished his cereal in silence and disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later, I heard him talking on his phone in a low, urgent voice. Cara came downstairs wearing a sundress and a bright smile. What was that about? I told Brad it's time for him to move out. Her smile faltered. Don't you think that's a little harsh? He's family. Family doesn't take advantage of hospitality. He's not taking advantage, isn't he? I looked directly at her. Cara, we need to talk. Something in my voice must have warned her. She sat down slowly, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. I know about Danny, I said quietly. The color drained from her face. Eli, I can explain. I know about Mike Santos, too. And Jake Morrison. Cara's mouth opened and closed without sound. And I know about Brad. She started crying then, big theatrical tears that might have moved me a week ago. Now they just made me tired. How long? I asked. It's not what you think. How long, Cara? 6 months, she whispered. Maybe 7. 7 months. Almost our entire marriage had been a lie. Why? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know. I was bored. You work all the time and I felt lonely. So, you decided to sleep with half the town? It wasn't like that. Danny was just... He made me feel special. And then Mike was so sweet and Jake was going through his divorce. And Brad? That just happened. We were both here alone one night and... I held up my hand to stop her. I didn't need the details. The betrayal was bad enough without a play-by-play. Pack your things, I said. You have until tomorrow night to find somewhere else to live. Eli, please. We can work this out. I'll end it with all of them. I'll go to counseling. It's too late for that. But I love you. I looked at her sitting there in my kitchen, tears streaming down her face, and felt nothing but pity. No, you don't. You love my house, my money, and the security I provided while you played around. But you don't love me. She tried to argue, but I walked away. I had work to do. Sunday morning I woke up alone. Cara had spent the night at her friend Jennifer's house, probably spinning some story about her cruel husband who didn't understand her needs. I didn't care. For the first time in months, I'd slept through the night without wondering where my wife really was. Brad was gone too. His room was empty except for a note on the pillow. Sorry, Uncle Eli, I'll pay you back someday. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Someday wasn't good enough, but I had bigger problems to worry about. Tommy arrived at 8 with coffee and donuts from Murphy's Bakery. We sat on my back porch, watching the October sun burn off the morning mist. Cara's moving out, I told him. About time. What's your next move? I want to make sure everyone in town knows exactly what kind of people they've been dealing with. Tommy bit into a glazed donut and studied my face. Be specific. Danny's been defrauding his clients with substandard materials. Mike Santos has been sleeping with married women while running a family-friendly business. Jake Morrison's been cheating on his wife while she's going through cancer treatment. And you want to expose all of them? I want justice, Tommy. These men have been lying, cheating, and stealing while good people trusted them. Someone needs to hold them accountable. What about Cara? What about her? You going to destroy her reputation too? I considered the question. Cara had betrayed me in the worst possible way, but she was also young and stupid, rather than malicious. The men she'd been with were older, more experienced, and should have known better. Cara will face consequences when the divorce becomes public. That's enough. Tommy nodded approvingly. So, what's the plan? I pulled out a manila folder thick with photographs, documents, and printed emails. We're going to give people the information they need to make informed decisions. The first stop was the medical complex where Danny had been using fake mulch and substandard soil. The facility manager was Dr. Patricia Wells, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who took pride in maintaining a professional environment. Mr. Weston, she said when I knocked on her office door, what can I do for you? I have some concerns about the landscaping work being done here. I showed her Tommy's photographs of Danny's crew dumping dyed sawdust and using poor-quality plants. I explained the long-term consequences, faded plants, soil erosion, and the need for expensive repairs within a year. Dr. Wells studied the evidence with the attention of someone who understood the value of documentation. This is very troubling. We paid premium prices for quality work. I have samples of the materials if you'd like to have them tested. Yes, I would. And Mr. Weston, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Not many people would have bothered. Good people deserve honest work. The second stop was the fitness center. Mike Santos was training a client when I walked in, barking encouragement, while a middle-aged woman struggled with free weights. I waited until he was finished, then approached the front desk. Mike? I'm Eli Weston. I do landscaping around town. Sure, I know who you are. Mike's handshake was firm and confident. What can I do for you? I wanted to discuss a personal matter about my wife. Mike's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do. I kept my voice calm and professional. Cara's told me about your relationship. Look, man, if you're here to cause trouble, I'm here to give you some advice. Stay away from married women. It's bad for business. Mike glanced around the gym, suddenly aware that other people might be listening. This isn't the place for this conversation. You're right. The place for this conversation was 6 months ago, before you decided to sleep with someone else's wife. I turned and walked out, leaving Mike standing there with his mouth open. By tonight, everyone in the gym would know that Mike Santos had been caught cheating with a married woman. Word would spread from there. The third stop was the hardest. Jake Morrison's real estate office was downtown, across from the bank where his wife Linda worked when she wasn't undergoing chemotherapy treatments. Jake was on the phone when I walked in, discussing property values with a potential client. He was a thin man in his 40s, prematurely gray from stress and guilt. I'll call you back, he said when he saw me, and hung up. Eli, this is unexpected. I'll bet it is. I sat down across from his desk without being invited. How's Linda doing? The treatments are going well. Thank you for asking. That's good to hear. Cancer's a terrible thing to face alone. Jake's face went pale. What do you want? I want you to think about what you're doing to your wife. Linda's fighting for her life while you're screwing around with mine. Eli, I never meant... I don't care what you meant. I care what you did. I leaned forward. Linda deserves better than a husband who cheats on her while she's sick. End it with Cara. Focus on your wife, and maybe you can salvage some dignity from this mess. Jake stared at his desk. It's already over. I ended it last week. Good. Keep it that way. I left Jake's office feeling like I'd accomplished something important. Linda Morrison was a good woman who didn't deserve to have her marriage destroyed while she fought cancer. If I could save one marriage while ending my own, that was something. The final stop was Danny's office. His landscaping business operated out of a converted garage behind his house, a modest setup that reflected his fly-by-night approach to everything. Danny was loading mulch bags when I pulled up. Real mulch this time, probably for a client who knew enough to inspect the materials. Eli. He straightened up slowly. I heard you've been making the rounds today. Word travels fast in a small town. What do you want? I want you to explain to Dr. Wells why her landscaping is going to fail within 6 months. I want you to refund the money you stole by using substandard materials, and I want you to leave town like we discussed. Danny threw down the bag he'd been holding. You can't force me to leave. I'm not forcing anything. I'm just making sure people know who they're dealing with. You're destroying my business over a woman who doesn't even love you. The words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm destroying your business because you're a fraud, Danny. The affair just gave me the motivation to do something about it. Danny took a step toward me, his fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might actually throw a punch. Then he seemed to deflate. I never meant for it to happen with Cara. Yes, you did. You've always taken whatever you wanted without thinking about the consequences. The only difference is that this time, there are consequences. I drove home as the sun was setting, painting the October sky in shades of orange and red. Cara's car was in the driveway, along with a U-Haul trailer. She was keeping her word about moving out. I found her in the bedroom, packing clothes into suitcases with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Almost finished, she said without looking up. Where will you go? Jennifer's for now, maybe Boston after that. That's probably for the best. She stopped packing and looked at me directly for the first time in days. I'm sorry, Eli. I really am. I know you are. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? I considered the question honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. Cara nodded and went back to packing. An hour later, she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume and 3 years of broken promises. I poured myself a bourbon and sat on my back porch, watching the stars come out over the town I'd called home for 23 years. Tomorrow, there would be gossip and questions, and probably some angry phone calls from the men whose secrets I'd exposed. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was alone in my own house, without wondering where my wife really was or who she was with. It felt like freedom. Monday morning brought the reckoning I'd been expecting. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. and didn't stop until I finally turned it off at noon. The first call was from Dr. Wells at the medical complex. Mr. Weston, we had the soil samples tested over the weekend. You were absolutely right about the substandard materials. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you know the truth now. We're terminating our contract with Kellerman Landscaping immediately. Would you be interested in submitting a bid for remediation work? I'd be honored to. The second call was from Mike Santos, and it wasn't nearly as pleasant. You snake, he started without preamble. You cost me 3 clients this morning. I didn't cost you anything, Mike. Your choices did that. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Stay away from married women and focus on your business. You might salvage something from this mess. He hung up on me, but I wasn't worried. Mike was all bluster and no substance. The third call was from Janet Morrison. I heard through the grapevine that Cara moved out yesterday. News travels fast. It does in small towns. Are you ready to file for divorce? Absolutely. Good. I'll have the papers drawn up by Wednesday. Based on the evidence you provided and her voluntary departure from the marital home, this should be straightforward. Tommy arrived at my office around 10 with coffee and a satisfied expression. You should see Danny's place, he said. He's got a for sale sign on his house and his equipment loaded on trailers. He's really leaving? Looks like it. Word is he's moving to New Hampshire to work for his brother-in-law. That's probably for the best. Tommy studied my face. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. It's amazing how much energy you waste when you're living a lie. What's next? I rebuild. The business, my reputation, my life, all of it. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even Tommy. We took on the medical complex remediation project, which led to 3 more commercial contracts. Word spread that Weston Landscaping delivered quality work at fair prices, a revolutionary concept in the post-Danny era. Jake Morrison called 2 weeks after our confrontation. Eli, I wanted to thank you. For what? For making me face what I was doing to Linda. We're in counseling now, working on rebuilding our marriage. How is she? Getting stronger every day. The doctors are optimistic about her recovery. I'm glad to hear that, Jake. Linda's a good woman. She is, and I was a fool to risk losing her. I didn't disagree. A month after Cara left, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked good, thinner, maybe a little tired, but good. She was with a man I didn't recognize, someone young and expensive looking. Eli, she said when our eyes met across the produce section. Cara. How are you? Good. You? I'm okay. I'm living in Boston now, working at a salon downtown. That's nice. We stood there for a moment, 2 people who'd shared a life and now had nothing to say to each other. I signed the divorce papers, she said finally. I know. Janet told me. I didn't ask for anything. The house, the business. It's all yours. I appreciate that. It was the least I could do. Her new boyfriend appeared at her elbow, impatient and possessive. He was younger than me, maybe even younger than Cara, with the kind of careless confidence that came from never facing real consequences. Ready to go, babe? Almost. Cara looked at me one more time. Be happy, Eli. You deserve it. I watched them leave together and felt nothing but relief. Cara was someone else's problem now. Winter came early that year, blanketing Millfield in snow by Thanksgiving. I spent the holidays with Tommy's family, eating too much turkey and watching football with people who knew my whole story and didn't judge me for it. You're different, Tommy's wife Sarah observed as we cleared dishes after dinner. How so? Lighter, like you've been carrying a heavy load and finally put it down. She was right. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Spring brought new contracts and new possibilities. I hired 2 additional crew members and bought a new truck. Weston Landscaping was busier than it had ever been, built on a foundation of honest work and fair dealing. I also started dating again, something I'd thought I'd never want to do. Her name was Rebecca, and she was a divorced teacher who understood the value of starting over. We took things slowly, building trust the way I built gardens, carefully, with attention to detail and respect for the long term. One evening in May, Rebecca and I were having dinner at Murphy's Tavern when Mike Santos walked in. He'd lost weight and looked older, the consequences of his choices written in the lines around his eyes. He saw me and hesitated, then walked over to our table. Eli. Mike. I wanted to apologize for everything. Apology accepted. I lost the gym, had to sell it last month. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything to say. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that I understand why you did what you did. I probably deserved worse. He walked away before I could reply, leaving me with the uncomfortable realization that revenge, even justified revenge, came with a price for everyone involved. Who was that? Rebecca asked. Someone from my past. He looked like he was carrying a heavy load. He is, but that's his choice to make. Rebecca squeezed my hand across the table. I'm glad you found a way to put yours down. That night, as I lay in bed next to a woman who loved me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I thought about the past year. The betrayal, the anger, the careful planning of my revenge, and the slow process of rebuilding my life. I'd lost a wife, a nephew, and a best friend. But I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could survive betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. Danny Kellerman had been wrong about one thing. Cara might not have loved me, but I'd learned to love myself again. And that was enough. Outside my window, the spring rain was nourishing the gardens I'd planted, helping them grow strong and healthy in soil that had been properly prepared. Like everything else worth having, it took time, patience, and honest work. But the results were worth the wait.